Welcome to Zoe Stories. I swapped bodies, now I'm pregnant. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the apartment. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror, a mix of unease and curiosity twisting in my chest. It was strange, unnervingly so, how familiar yet foreign my own face felt today. My name is Alex, and until recently, I was living a life I thought I understood. A life where secrets were small and manageable, where the duality of my desires was contained in hidden corners and private moments. By day, I worked as a junior graphic designer at a small but bustling agency downtown. The job required creativity, focus, and the occasional client presentation. Nothing too daring, nothing that would put me in the spotlight. But by night, I explored another side of myself, one that had been quietly yearning for expression. Cross-dressing was not a new discovery for me. It was an obsession I nurtured in secret, a private passion that allowed me to explore parts of my identity that the world, and even I, had yet to fully understand. I had always been careful. Clothing, makeup, and subtle feminine gestures were a hidden language, a ritual that grounded me and gave me an exhilarating sense of freedom. There were nights when I would stand in front of the mirror, trying on skirts, slipping into heels, and painting my lips with trembling precision. Each transformation was a thrill, a mixture of vulnerability and empowerment that left my heart racing. But I had never imagined that one morning, everything could change so drastically. And yet here I was. Something about the air in the apartment felt different, charged with an invisible tension. I glanced around, noticing the small details, the neatly arranged books, the faint scent of coffee still lingering from last night, the soft hum of the city waking outside the window. Nothing seemed out of place, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to tilt in ways I couldn't control. Mia, my girlfriend, stirred in the next room, her presence both comforting and complicated. Our relationship had always been intense, a mix of tenderness, attraction, and unspoken boundaries. She was perceptive, quick to notice shifts in my mood, and her curiosity about my secret life had always been tempered with a playful caution. Mia and I had explored the edges of my cross-dressing fantasies together, but we had also maintained an unspoken line, one that, until today, I had never crossed. She called softly from the kitchen, her voice tinged with sleepiness. "Alex, breakfast's ready. Are you coming?" The normalcy of her tone made the tension in my chest tighten further. How could I explain the anomaly of today, the impossible shift that had occurred overnight? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to sound casual. "Yeah, coming." As I walked toward the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror again. Something was off, my posture, the curve of my hips, the subtle softness in my features. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and stepped closer. The reflection stared back, and for the first time, I recognized something I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the familiar thrill of cross-dressing anymore. It was my body, entirely different, reshaped in ways I hadn't consented to or even imagined. My stomach had a roundness, a fullness that seemed impossible. My hands, smaller and more delicate than usual, rested on the gentle curve of my abdomen, and I froze, panic and disbelief warring with a strange, unbidden curiosity. Mia looked up from the counter, smiling sleepily, unaware of the storm brewing in my mind. "Everything okay?" she asked. The question was innocent, but it hit me with the weight of inevitability. How could I possibly explain what had happened? How could I articulate the impossible truth that I had somehow swapped bodies, or that my body now carried a life I couldn't fathom? I sank into the chair, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Memories of yesterday flickered through my mind, our playful banter about what-if scenarios, the late-night curiosity that had led to some reckless experimentation, the whispered jokes about magical transformations and impossible body swaps. I had laughed them off, dismissing them as fantasies, but the reality now pressed heavily against me. Somehow, I was living one of those fantasies, one that was now uncomfortably real. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in, the familiar hum of the city outside growing distant. I wanted to reach out, to call someone, anyone, but fear and disbelief held me frozen. Mia moved closer, brushing a lock of hair from my face, her touch gentle, grounding. "You've been quiet," she murmured, eyes searching mine. "Something's up, isn't it?" I shook my head, attempting a smile, but it felt fragile, inadequate. "Just thinking," I said softly. The words felt hollow, insufficient to explain the whirlwind inside me. She frowned slightly, but didn't press, trusting me, or perhaps sensing the fragile barrier I had constructed around my secret self. As breakfast passed in awkward silence, I tried to piece together the impossibility of it all. How had this happened? Was it some sort of supernatural twist, a prank, or a cruel accident? I couldn't remember anything that could logically explain this. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. The soft curve of my stomach, the weight shifting differently with every movement, the delicate hands that now rested over a body that was no longer entirely mine. Mia's presence, always a source of warmth and intimacy, now felt both comforting and terrifying. I had to navigate this delicate new reality with her by my side, balancing the thrill of transformation with the fear of revelation. Every glance, every touch, every word carried double meaning, each interaction a subtle test of whether I could maintain the fragile balance of secrecy and revelation. I left the kitchen quietly, retreating to the bedroom. The mirror beckoned, reflecting not just my altered body, but the uncertainty and vulnerability that came with it. I studied the subtle details, the swell of my stomach, the softness of my features, the undeniable femininity that had been imposed upon me overnight. And beneath the shock and fear, a small, undeniable pulse of curiosity flickered. What would it be like to fully inhabit this new body, to explore its possibilities, to confront the challenges and desires it now demanded? Mia's footsteps approached, soft and tentative. "Alex," she called. The name sounded strange on my lips now, strange in this new body. I hesitated, heart pounding, and turned to face her. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The day ahead promised challenges, fears, and discoveries I could not yet imagine. But one thing was certain: my secret life, my desires, and my reality had collided in a way that would change everything. And deep down, beneath the shock and fear, I knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test every limit of identity, intimacy, and transformation. The first few hours after realizing the impossibility of my situation were a blur. Every reflection, every movement, every breath reminded me that my reality had shifted entirely. My hands, delicate and soft, lingered over my swollen stomach as though touching it could somehow make sense of the impossible. I had spent years secretly exploring the thrill of becoming feminine through cross-dressing, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for this. Mia watched me quietly, a mixture of concern and curiosity flickering across her face. She had always been supportive of my private explorations, but this was beyond anything we had ever discussed. Her hand brushed lightly against mine. "Alex, talk to me," she said gently, her tone soft yet insistent. My pulse raced. Could I possibly explain the unexplainable? How could I tell her that my body now carried a life, that I had swapped into someone else, or maybe that someone or something had swapped into me? I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. I don't know how to explain it. The words sounded hollow even to me, but they were the truth. I wanted to articulate the surge of emotions within me: fear, vulnerability, excitement, but no combination of words could capture it. Mia nodded slowly, sensing the magnitude of the moment, and chose silence over prying, letting me grapple with the reality. The apartment felt smaller now, the familiar walls enclosing a space that was no longer entirely mine. Every step I took reminded me of the weight shifting differently, the softness beneath my fingers, the new contours that made ordinary movements feel foreign. Even walking across the room was a challenge. Balance, posture, and awareness had become entirely new concepts. I could feel the subtle sway of hips, the pull of gravity on curves that had not existed yesterday, and a strange, dizzying combination of power and vulnerability filled me. I retreated to the bedroom, seeking solitude and clarity. In the mirror, my reflection stared back, an image both familiar and alien. The softening of my jaw, the delicate curve of my cheeks, the subtle swell of my stomach. It was undeniable. I traced the lines gently, as if memorizing a body that was both mine and not mine, a duality that made my heart pound and my mind reel. The thrill of cross-dressing, the careful selection of clothes, the ritual of makeup, the sensation of high heels, had always brought me a heady mix of empowerment and vulnerability. But this was different. This was not a choice I had made in private. This was not a playful experiment. This was an unasked-for reality, forcing me to embody femininity and the physical consequences of a body that could carry life. And yet, deep within me, a small pulse of forbidden curiosity sparked. How would it feel, truly, to live this life? To inhabit this body fully, in a way I had only dared to imagine? Mia's presence broke my reverie. She stood in the doorway, hesitant, a cup of tea in her hands. "You should eat something," she said softly. Her gaze lingered on my stomach, and I felt a flush of embarrassment, a mixture of shame and something else I couldn't name. Was it excitement? Fear? Desire? The lines between them blurred. I nodded mutely, accepting the tea, trying to maintain composure. Every sip, every gesture, every small movement reminded me that I was no longer simply Alex. I was someone or something new. The persona I had nurtured in secret for years had evolved overnight, forced into existence by a reality that was impossible, terrifying, and thrilling all at once. Hours passed, and I found myself experimenting cautiously. I had always known the power of clothing and appearance, the way fabric and color could transform not just the body but the psyche. Now, every choice carried weight beyond aesthetics. I selected a soft blouse and a flowing skirt, feeling the unfamiliar weight and texture of fabric against curves that were suddenly more pronounced. The high heels felt alien at first, each step a delicate negotiation with balance and confidence. Mia watched quietly, a mixture of amusement and concern in her eyes. "You're moving differently," she observed. "Your posture, everything." Her words were both observation and confirmation. I could feel the truth in them. Each movement, each gesture, reinforced the transformation that had already occurred, blurring the line between playful fantasy and irreversible reality. The internal conflict was almost unbearable. Part of me wanted to flee, to hide, to return to the simplicity of my former self. But another part, a part one had always denied, thrived in the experience. The vulnerability, the new sensations, the awareness of a body capable of life. Awakened feelings I had never fully acknowledged. My heartbeat quickened at the thought of being seen, of being understood, even partially, in this new form. By the afternoon, the suspense had deepened. Every sound outside the apartment, every footstep in the hallway, every message notification carried the potential to reveal my secret. Mia had errands to run, leaving me alone for the first time since the transformation. The quiet of the apartment amplified every small noise, turning ordinary sounds into signals of threat. I moved carefully, each step a study in balance and awareness, the thrill of vulnerability mingling with fear of discovery. I explored the apartment methodically, testing the limits of my new body, practicing movements I had once taken for granted. Sitting, standing, bending, each action carried the weight of novelty. Even the simple act of stretching felt like a performance, a delicate balance between control and exposure. Mirrors became both allies and tormentors, reflecting a reality I could neither fully embrace nor reject. Hours stretched into evening, and the suspense escalated. The anticipation of Mia's return, the unasked-for pregnancy, and the impossibility of my situation created a tight coil of tension. I knew I could not stay hidden forever, that secrets had a way of surfacing, especially ones this profound. My mind raced with scenarios, each more dramatic than the last, weighing the risks of revelation against the thrill of inhabiting this new existence. Finally, the first whispers of night fell across the city. The golden glow of sunset faded, leaving the apartment bathed in shadows. I stood in the mirror again, taking stock of every curve, every line, every subtle difference. The suspense was nearly unbearable, the internal conflict a storm that churned endlessly within me. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the anxiety, a small spark of daring flickered, a desire to explore fully, to push boundaries, to see how far this new life could take me. The night promised more than quiet reflection. It promised choices, challenges, and tests of identity that I could not yet foresee. And as I adjusted the hem of the skirt, feeling the gentle swell of my stomach beneath, I realized that the real journey was only beginning. The apartment felt quieter now, but the silence was deceptive. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren outside, seemed amplified in my heightened awareness. I moved cautiously from room to room, testing the limits of this new body that seemed both mine and alien. Sitting on the couch, I felt the soft curve of my belly pressing gently against my legs, a constant reminder that my life had irrevocably changed overnight. I decided to explore the wardrobe, a place that had once been my sanctuary for secret indulgence. Now, it was an arena of self-discovery and tension. Clothes I had carefully chosen for moments of private transformation felt different in this body. Fabrics draped differently, silhouettes shifted, and even colors seemed to carry more weight, more significance. I ran my fingers along skirts, dresses, and blouses, imagining how each piece would conform to this new form, how it would accentuate curves I had never possessed. The thrill of anticipation mingled with anxiety. In the past, choosing an outfit had been playful, empowering, a game of self-expression. Now, every choice carried consequences. Each article of clothing was a potential exposure, a statement of a reality I wasn't sure I was ready to confront fully. Yet, deep inside, a forbidden excitement pulsed through me. I carefully selected a soft, pastel dress, its fabric flowing and light, feeling the unfamiliar weight of it in my hands. As I dressed, the sensations were overwhelming. The skirt brushed against my thighs, the blouse hugged my chest in unfamiliar ways, and the subtle pinch of heels beneath my feet demanded balance and attention. I moved slowly, cautiously, learning the mechanics of a body that seemed to have a life of its own. Every movement, every gesture, reminded me that I was inhabiting a form I had only fantasized about before. The thrill was intoxicating, but so was the vulnerability. I practiced my posture in front of the mirror, noticing the sway of my hips, the gentle tilt of my shoulders, the way my hair fell differently around my face. My reflection seemed almost surreal, a duality between who I had been and who I was becoming. The pregnancy, subtle but undeniable, added another layer of complexity. Each breath reminded me of the life growing within me, a reality I had no choice but to navigate carefully. Time passed slowly, and the suspense escalated. Every sound outside the apartment, every passing conversation in the hallways, was a potential threat. Mia was still out, running errands, and the quiet allowed me to explore freely, but also forced me to confront my fears. What if someone saw me like this? What if Mia returned unexpectedly? The tension coiled tighter with every tick of the clock. I wandered to the living room, testing movements in heels. The sensation of balance was different, more precarious. I stumbled slightly, heart racing, and caught myself on the edge of the coffee table. My reflection in the window caught my eye, and I froze. The mirror of the city outside reflected not just a person, but a persona in flux, fragile, yet undeniably feminine. The juxtaposition of danger and thrill surged through me. I could feel the pulse in my throat, the quickening of my heartbeat, and the deep, unspoken desire to see how far I could push this transformation. The phone buzzed on the counter, startling me. It was a message from Mia. "Running a bit late. Don't wait for me." My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to breathe a sigh of relief, time alone to explore this new identity. But another part of me feared what that alone meant. Alone, I could experiment freely, but alone also meant the stakes of discovery rested entirely on me. Each movement, each choice of clothing, each gesture could define the next chapter of this unimaginable experience. Curiosity won over hesitation. I sat at the vanity, pulling out makeup I had never applied in this new body. Foundation, blush, eyeliner, and lipstick. Each stroke brought awareness of the transformation. My fingers trembled as I traced contours, blending colors carefully, noticing how differently the brushes moved across the new curves of my face. The process was meditative, terrifying, and thrilling all at once. With each layer of makeup, the reflection in the mirror became more convincingly feminine, more distinctly me, yet not the me I had known. The emotional tension deepened as I experimented with expressions. A smile, a tilt of the head, a glance sideways. Each subtle gesture carried layers of new meaning. I practiced moving my hands gracefully, adjusting to the delicate sensation of rings and bracelets that now adorned my fingers. Even small actions, like reaching for a book or adjusting my hair, became lessons in patience, coordination, and self-awareness. Time seemed elastic, stretching and contracting as I lost myself in the experience. I explored every inch of the apartment as if learning to navigate a new world. My belly, round and undeniable, reminded me constantly of the life growing within me, of the permanence of this transformation. Each step, each movement, each breath was an exercise in negotiating this fragile balance between fear and excitement. The suspense was further heightened by the knowledge that Mia could return at any moment. The thrill of secrecy pulsed through me. Every sound at the door, every knock, every unexpected noise made my heart race. I imagined her reaction, the mixture of shock, curiosity, and concern she might feel, and it both terrified and thrilled me. Could she accept this? Could she understand the reality I was navigating? Or would this be the moment that shattered our carefully balanced world? By late afternoon, I found myself sprawled on the couch, exhausted yet exhilarated. The day had been a series of discoveries, physical, emotional, and psychological. I had tested the limits of this new body, explored the sensations of femininity and pregnancy, and wrestled with the internal storm of desire, fear, and anticipation. Every choice, every movement, every reflection in the mirror was a lesson, a revelation, a step further into an uncharted reality. And as the city lights began to flicker on, casting shadows across the apartment, I realized that the real challenge had only just begun. Alone, yet not entirely free, I sat with the duality of my existence pressing down on me. The suspense, the thrill, and the fear were intertwined in a delicate dance, and I knew that each choice I made would shape not only this day, but the future of the life I now carried within me. Evening settled into the apartment, and the shadows stretched long across the walls, wrapping the space in an intimate, almost secretive embrace. I wandered slowly through the rooms, my mind racing with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Each step in the heels was deliberate now, a careful study in balance and grace. The body beneath me felt simultaneously fragile and powerful, alive in ways I had never truly experienced before. I paused by the living room window, the city lights reflecting off the glass and illuminating my reflection. The familiar skyline seemed different tonight, as if mirroring the transformation I had undergone. My hand instinctively rose to my stomach, tracing the soft curve that had become a symbol of the impossibility of my situation. How could a life I never asked for suddenly exist within me? The thought was both terrifying and intoxicating, pulling me deeper into the duality of fear and fascination. The suspense in the apartment was almost tangible. The faint hum of traffic, the occasional footsteps from neighboring apartments, even the distant laughter of people on the street, all became heightened signals, reminders that the world outside continued without knowledge of the secret life I now inhabited. I felt exposed, every movement a performance, every sound amplified in my heightened awareness. Curiosity overcame caution, and I decided to explore more intimate aspects of my transformation. My wardrobe had always been a playground for self-expression, but tonight, it became a laboratory for discovery. I carefully selected a silky camisole and a delicate skirt, feeling the textures glide over the curves that had only recently come into existence. The feeling was strange, alien, and yet deeply satisfying. Each movement in the mirror was a rehearsal, a negotiation with a new self I was only beginning to understand. As I experimented, I discovered the subtle ways my body responded differently. Even the act of breathing seemed to carry more awareness. The rise and fall of my chest, the shift of weight in my belly, and the movement of my hips created a rhythm I had never noticed before. It was mesmerizing and disorienting, a constant reminder that the body I had known was gone, replaced by one that demanded attention, care, and respect. The emotional tension was compounded by the knowledge that Mia could return at any moment. The thought of her walking through the door, catching me mid-transformation, sent a shiver down my spine. My heart raced with anticipation and fear. Would she laugh, be shocked, or simply accept the new reality? The uncertainty gnawed at me, turning every small noise into a potential revelation. I moved to the vanity once more, this time focusing on details I had previously overlooked. Lipstick, carefully applied, accentuated the fullness of my lips, and blush brought a softness to my cheeks that heightened the illusion of femininity. Each brushstroke, each application, was a ritual of acceptance and discovery. My reflection seemed almost alive, a mirror not just of my appearance, but of the new identity I was navigating. The sensation of jewelry on my delicate hands further emphasized the transformation. Rings, bracelets, and even the subtle weight of a necklace altered the way I carried myself. Every movement became deliberate, graceful, and performative, a dance of awareness and exploration. I felt the thrill of embodying a persona I had only ever imagined, the tension of secrecy amplifying every sensation. Suddenly, a sound from the hallway made me freeze, a soft knock on the door, deliberate and insistent. My pulse quickened, and I froze, unsure whether to hide, answer, or pretend nothing was amiss. The knock repeated, more urgent this time, and I realized that the suspense I had cultivated in solitude had just escalated into immediate danger. My mind raced through possibilities. It could be Mia returning early. It could be a neighbor, curious or concerned. Every scenario carried risk, each one threatening to expose the fragile balance of secrecy I had constructed. I backed toward the corner, clutching my stomach, and tried to steady my breathing. The heels made retreating awkward, each step a careful negotiation with the floor, the mirror, and my own panic. I peeked through the peephole and saw nothing. Just the dimly lit hallway, empty and quiet. My heart refused to calm, adrenaline coursing through me as I realized the suspense was now a tangible presence in the room. I was no longer simply exploring my transformation. I was performing it under the constant threat of discovery, and every second heightened the tension. Seeking to regain composure, I returned to the mirror, examining myself carefully. The dress flowed over my body, the makeup accentuated my features, and the jewelry completed the illusion. And yet, beneath the surface, I felt the undeniable weight of my secret. The pregnancy, the impossible swap, the knowledge that my life had shifted irreversibly. I explored my emotions, confronting the fear, the shame, the thrill, and the longing that had always coexisted within me. This body was both a prison and a playground, a vessel of vulnerability and empowerment. Every glance at my reflection reminded me of the delicate balance between secrecy and revelation, the thrill of living a hidden desire and the terror of exposure. As the night deepened, I moved cautiously through the apartment, testing my balance, my grace, and my awareness. Each small action, a stretch, a turn, a shift in posture, was a negotiation with the new self I had been given. The pregnancy, subtle but undeniable, reminded me that this transformation was permanent in ways I could not yet fully grasp. Each heartbeat, each breath, Each step carried the weight of the impossible reality I now inhabited. By the time Mia returned, I had practiced walking, sitting, and gesturing as if this were my natural state. But the tension remained, a tight coil of excitement and fear that would not release. I was ready to face her, but only partially, ready to explore, to reveal in controlled measures, to navigate the suspense and curiosity that now defined every moment of my existence. The door clicked open, and Mia's familiar voice filled the apartment. My heart leapt, my pulse raced, and the suspense reached its peak. Every movement, every gesture, every glance would now be scrutinized, not just by me, but by the one person who could confirm or shatter the fragile reality I had built. The apartment was dimly lit now, the glow of the streetlights casting long shadows across the walls. Each shadow seemed to mock me, reflecting the duality of my existence. I moved carefully, heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, every sound exaggerated in the quiet. My body had become both a source of fascination and anxiety. The curve of my hips, the swell of my stomach, the delicate contours of my hands. Every movement demanded awareness. Every breath carried weight. I sat on the edge of the couch, fingers tracing the soft fabric of my skirt, and felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Excitement surged through me, the thrill of inhabiting this body, of finally living a secret desire made real. But beneath it, fear coiled tightly, a constant reminder of the stakes. Mia could return at any moment, or a neighbor might pass by, and my fragile world could shatter in an instant. The pregnancy added layers I had never anticipated. Every small shift of my belly, every subtle kick or flutter, reminded me that this was no longer a temporary experience. This was life-altering. The body I had fantasized about, explored in secret, and experimented with in private was now undeniably permanent in its reality. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying, blending desire with the weight of responsibility. I decided to explore the bedroom once more, drawn to the mirror that reflected every detail of my transformation. Standing before it, I adjusted my blouse, feeling the fabric glide over my chest, the skirt swaying gently with each movement. I ran my hands over my stomach, tracing the gentle curve, and marveled at the reality that had become my life. It was intimate, profound, and wholly new. The suspense in the apartment seemed to thicken. Every sound outside, the distant laughter of a passerby, the hum of a car engine, the faint creak of the radiator, felt amplified. My heightened awareness made ordinary noises seem like warnings, signals of potential discovery. The thrill of secrecy pulsed through me, mingling with the fear of exposure. I knew I could not remain isolated forever. Eventually, the world would intersect with this fragile, suspended reality. I turned my attention to my makeup, refining the details that had become essential to my new persona. Lipstick deepened the fullness of my lips, blush accentuated the softness of my cheeks, and eyeliner brought attention to the curve of my eyes. Every stroke was deliberate, careful, almost ritualistic, a way to assert control over a body that was simultaneously mine and foreign. The mirror reflected a face I recognized, but also one that belonged to someone new, someone transformed beyond imagination. A sudden knock at the door made me jump, my heart leaping into my throat. The suspense that had been building over the day reached a new peak. I froze, clutching my stomach as if the gesture could protect me from exposure. Mia's voice called out, teasingly, "Alex? Are you there?" My pulse quickened. Should I answer? Pretend? Or continue hiding, hoping she wouldn't notice the subtle differences in my posture, my movements, my very presence? I hesitated, then decided to respond carefully. "Yeah, I'm here." My voice trembled, betraying the fear and excitement coiled inside me. Footsteps approached, and I felt the delicate balance of my transformation being tested. Mia entered, her eyes immediately noticing the subtle changes, the sway of my hips, the softness in my gestures, the careful attention to posture. Her gaze lingered, curiosity mixed with a hint of amusement and concern. "You've changed something," she observed, a gentle smile tugging at her lips. I nodded, unsure how much to reveal, how much to keep hidden. The suspense was electric. Each glance, each word, each gesture was a delicate negotiation, a test of my ability to maintain the illusion while exploring the reality of my new form. I moved to the bedroom again, seeking solace and privacy. The mirror reflected every detail: the curve of my hips, the swell of my belly, the delicate lines of my face enhanced by makeup. I experimented with movements, gestures, and expressions, feeling both the thrill of self-expression and the fear of exposure. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, all elements of a persona that was simultaneously fantasy and reality, felt alive beneath my fingers, my body, my awareness. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the apartment like fingers reaching for me. I practiced walking and sitting, each step a test of balance, control, and confidence. The pregnancy added a constant reminder of permanence, of a reality that could not be undone. Every motion carried significance, every glance in the mirror a confirmation of the duality I now embodied. Mia returned to the living room, sitting nearby, but giving me space. The unspoken tension hung thick in the air. I could feel her curiosity, her concern, and her admiration all intertwined. The suspense of being observed without fully revealing myself created a heady mix of fear and exhilaration. I was living a secret desire made real, yet constantly aware that discovery could happen at any moment. By midnight, the apartment felt like a world suspended between reality and fantasy. I explored every movement, every gesture, every reflection, testing the limits of my new identity. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the duality of existence, they all coalesced into an experience that was thrilling, terrifying, and transformative. I knew the next moments would challenge me further, pushing the boundaries of secrecy, identity, and desire. And as the city slept outside, I stood before the mirror one last time, tracing the curves of my body, the swell of my belly, the lines of my face. The suspense, the fear, and the thrill intertwined into a delicate tension that promised the next stage of discovery, confrontation, and transformation. Tonight was only the beginning. The apartment was cloaked in shadows, the faint glow of streetlights filtering through half-closed blinds. Each creak of the floorboards beneath my heels seemed louder than it had ever been before. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, and I paused, taking in the unfamiliar silhouette that now occupied my life. The pregnancy pressed against my awareness with every movement, a constant, undeniable reminder that my existence had irrevocably changed. I practiced walking again, heels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood, hips swaying with a measured elegance I had only ever imagined in secret. Every movement was deliberate, conscious, almost ritualistic. The tension of secrecy heightened my awareness. Mia's presence was just a few rooms away, and the possibility of being observed at any moment made each step feel like a performance, a balancing act between reality and fantasy. Curiosity and trepidation pulled me toward the vanity once more. Makeup brushes glided over my skin, accentuating features that now felt deeply intertwined with my identity. Lipstick highlighted the fullness of my lips, blush added softness to my cheeks, and eyeliner defined the shape of my eyes. Each stroke was deliberate, a careful assertion of control over a body that was otherwise unpredictable. My reflection stared back at me, a mirror of duality, someone I had been and someone I was becoming. The pregnancy added layers I could not ignore. Every subtle movement of my belly, every flutter, every shift reminded me that I was carrying life. It was intoxicating and terrifying simultaneously. I ran my hands over the soft curve, feeling a strange sense of connection and responsibility. How could this have happened? How could I have desired this secretly, only to find myself living it fully? My mind raced, alternating between disbelief, fear, and the thrill of fulfillment. The suspense of secrecy was now almost unbearable. I could hear distant noises from the hallway, a neighbor's footsteps, a car engine outside, even the faint hum of the refrigerator, each sound a potential threat, each one amplifying the pulse in my chest. The tension of anticipation mingled with excitement. The apartment felt like a stage, and I was the actor in a drama I had never rehearsed for. I moved to the living room, testing my balance, my posture, and my grace. The heels pressed against my feet, demanding attention and precision. Each step, each sway of my hips, each delicate movement of my hands reinforced the duality of my existence. The thrill of being observed, even indirectly by the world outside or potentially by Mia, heightened every sensation, making my body feel more alive, more vulnerable, and yet more empowered than ever. Then the sound of a key turning in the lock made my heart leap. Mia was returning. My pulse skyrocketed, and adrenaline surged through me like electricity. I froze, clutching my belly instinctively, aware that the secret I had been nurturing in isolation was about to collide with reality. Every instinct screamed at me to hide, to disguise, to become invisible, but I was no longer invisible. I was transformed, exposed in ways I could not reverse. Mia entered the apartment, her eyes immediately drawn to subtle changes, the sway of my hips, the soft curve of my stomach, the delicate grace in my gestures. Her gaze lingered with curiosity, surprise, and something I could not fully read. My chest tightened, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The suspense of being seen, of being discovered, of revealing the depth of my secret, made every movement deliberate, every breath shallow with anticipation. "You look different," she said softly, a mix of amusement and concern in her voice. I nodded, unsure how much to reveal, uncertain how much of my duality she could perceive. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the new identity, it all pressed heavily upon me. Each word, each gesture, each glance became a negotiation, a careful dance on a knife's edge between revelation and secrecy. I moved to the bedroom, my reflection catching every detail. The silky skirt, the delicate blouse, the subtle jewelry, the perfectly applied makeup, it all created an image both fantastical and frighteningly real. My belly, undeniable and prominent, added a layer of gravity and authenticity to the transformation. Every motion, every sway, every glance in the mirror reminded me of the fragility and excitement intertwined in this new life. Mia followed cautiously, her curiosity tempered by a gentle understanding. The suspense was palpable. Could she accept what she was seeing? Could she understand the reality of my situation? Or would this be the moment that shattered our carefully balanced world? The tension in the room was a living thing, pressing against my chest, amplifying every heartbeat, every breath, every movement. I practiced subtle gestures, tilting my head, shifting my weight, adjusting my hair, all the small actions that conveyed femininity, vulnerability, and confidence simultaneously. My reflection in the mirror captured the duality perfectly. I was still me, yet profoundly changed. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the body that was both mine and foreign, it all combined into an identity I was only beginning to inhabit fully. By late night, the apartment had transformed into a stage of suspense and self-discovery. Shadows danced across the walls, echoing the inner turmoil and exhilaration I felt. Every movement, every gesture, every reflection in the mirror was a rehearsal for the climax that was approaching, the confrontation, the exposure, the full realization of the life I now carried inside me. The suspense of secrecy had reached its peak. Every sound, every movement, every breath was a delicate balance between fear and desire. The transformation, the pregnancy, the dual identity, all converged in a charged moment of anticipation. I stood before the mirror, tracing the curves of my body, the swell of my belly, the lines of my face, knowing that the next moments would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself and my life. And as Mia lingered in the doorway, watching silently, the tension coiled tighter than ever. The suspense, the fear, and the thrill were now inseparable, pressing toward the inevitable, discovery, confrontation, and the emotional revelation that would define the next chapter of this impossible, extraordinary life. The moment had arrived. The apartment, once a haven of quiet exploration and secret indulgence, had become a stage for confrontation. Shadows stretched across the walls, casting elongated, almost eerie shapes that mirrored the tension coiling in my chest. Every sound, Mia's gentle breathing, the hum of the city outside, the faint click of my heels, felt amplified, each one a reminder that the delicate equilibrium of my secret life was about to be tested. Mia's eyes lingered on me, sharp and observant, as if she could see through the layers of clothing, makeup, and carefully practiced gestures. The sway of my hips, the subtle tilt of my head, the delicate curve of my belly, all spoke a language of transformation that words could not capture. My heart pounded, a rapid staccato of fear and exhilaration. Would she understand? Would she judge? Or would this be the moment that shattered everything I had come to accept about myself? I took a cautious step closer, heels clicking softly against the hardwood. Every movement felt deliberate, rehearsed, a silent plea for understanding. My hands instinctively rested on my stomach, the pregnancy pressing against my awareness with undeniable presence. The reality of carrying life in a body I had never fully inhabited before made every gesture weighted, every breath significant. Mia finally spoke, her voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Alex, is this real?" Her gaze flicked from my eyes to my stomach and back again. The suspense hung thick in the air. I could feel the truth pressing against my lips, the desire to confess clashing with the fear of being rejected or misunderstood. The duality of my identity, the person I had been and the person I was now, was laid bare in that moment. "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling with vulnerability. "It's real. I don't know how, but it is." The words felt both liberating and terrifying, released into the air like a fragile confession. Mia stepped closer, her hand hovering uncertainly before brushing lightly against my belly. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and sent a shiver of awareness through me. My secret, my desire, my fear, all converged in the contact. The suspense of discovery escalated as I realized that Mia was processing not just my transformation, but the pregnancy, the body swap, the duality that now defined my existence. Her expression was unreadable for a moment, a complex mixture of shock, curiosity, and something softer, perhaps empathy, perhaps intrigue. I held my breath, feeling exposed and alive in ways I had never imagined. I moved slightly, testing the boundaries of my new form. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, all elements of my transformation, responded to my body in ways that demanded awareness. Each step, each sway of my hips, each tilt of my head was a statement, an assertion of identity, a fragile negotiation with the world and with Mia's perception. The pregnancy added gravity to every motion, a constant reminder that this was no longer fantasy. This was real. Mia's gaze softened, her fingers brushing the curve of my belly with a tenderness that startled me. I don't know what to say," she murmured. The suspense in the room was almost tangible, a living entity pressing against my chest. Every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle gesture felt amplified, as if the apartment itself were holding its breath alongside us. I swallowed hard, trying to articulate the swirl of emotions within me. I wanted this secretly, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to explore this side of myself, and now it's real. I don't know how to explain it. The vulnerability of confession hung heavy, a delicate thread of truth exposed to the light of understanding or judgment. Mia's reaction was slow, deliberate. She studied me, the sway of my hips, the curve of my belly, the delicate lines of my face. The makeup, the clothing, the subtle jewelry, all contributed to a persona that was both familiar and extraordinary. Her eyes softened further, a mixture of compassion and fascination taking hold. The suspense began to shift, from fear of exposure to a tension of anticipation of what this revelation might mean for us. Suddenly, a sound from the hallway made us both jump, a loud knock, forceful and unexpected. My heart leapt into my throat. Mia's eyes widened, and I instinctively moved to shield the truth, adjusting my posture, covering my belly with a delicate motion of my hands. The suspense became immediate, urgent. Someone outside was unaware of the delicate balance unfolding inside, and any interruption could shatter the fragile equilibrium. Mia's voice was quiet but firm. "Stay calm. Don't panic." She moved slightly in front of me, her presence a shield, a reassurance. The knock came again, insistent. Every second stretched painfully, the tension rising to a peak that made my pulse thunder in my ears. My body trembled with adrenaline, my dual identity caught between concealment and revelation. I peeked through the peephole, heart pounding. A delivery man, oblivious to the drama inside, stood holding a package. Relief and embarrassment washed over me simultaneously. The suspense had momentarily shifted, yet the emotional tension between Mia and me remained at its peak. The near discovery had intensified our connection, our understanding, and our shared experience of the impossible reality I now inhabited. As I returned to Mia's side, I realized that the emotional climax was not just about being discovered. It was about acceptance, understanding, and navigating the uncharted territory of my new life. The pregnancy, the body swap, the cross-dressing, it all demanded a negotiation of trust, empathy, and intimacy that I had never anticipated. Mia took my hand, guiding it to rest lightly on her own. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. Her touch was grounding, a promise amid the chaos of transformation and suspense. The tension, while still present, shifted towards something more profound, a recognition that our bond could endure even in the face of extraordinary, life-altering changes. And yet, the suspense was far from over. Every sound, every movement, every breath could still expose the delicate reality of my dual identity. The apartment, once a haven, had become a theater of high stakes and heightened emotions. The night stretched ahead, filled with unknowns, discoveries, and challenges that would push me further into the reality of being both myself and the new, transformed body I inhabited. The knock at the door had jolted me into hyper-awareness, my pulse racing as if it could shatter the fragile air around me. Mia's hand rested lightly on my arm, grounding me, but I could feel the tremor in my fingers. The reality of the night, of my body, of my secret life, pressed down with relentless weight. Every sound, every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren, every rustle from the hallway, felt like it could unravel the delicate balance I had been struggling to maintain. I slowly approached the door, heels clicking softly against the floor, each step a calculated effort to maintain composure. My hands trembled, betraying my fear, as I reached for the doorknob. Mia's voice cut softly through the tension. "Just take it slow. We can handle this." Her reassurance was almost surreal in contrast to the storm of emotions surging inside me. I opened the door, revealing the delivery man holding a package, completely unaware of the drama unfolding behind the threshold. Relief washed over me like a sudden tide, and I handed over a tip, trying to maintain an air of casual normalcy. But the adrenaline didn't fade. It lingered, coiling tightly in my chest, a reminder that the world outside and the suspense within could collide at any moment. As the door closed behind him, I leaned against it, closing my eyes for a brief moment. Mia's presence behind me was comforting, yet the reality of my body, my pregnancy, and my dual identity surged forward. I was living a secret desire, yet it had become a living, breathing reality. Every heartbeat, every breath, every sway of my hips carried the weight of transformation, and I realized that there was no turning back. Mia studied me, her expression unreadable at first, then softening into something that felt like acceptance. "Alex, this is a lot," she said gently, her fingers brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. "I don't fully understand it, but I want to." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Part relief, part nervous anticipation.
She wasn't rejecting me.
She was stepping into this impossible situation alongside me, and that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I moved closer to the mirror, examining my reflection. The subtle curves of my belly, the softness of my features, the delicate clothing, the carefully applied makeup, all of it was a testament to the reality I now inhabited. My hands rested lightly on my stomach, feeling every flutter, every shift, a constant reminder that my secret desire had become irrevocably real. Mia's gaze followed me, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and fascination, watching the transformation with a quiet intensity that made my chest tighten. The suspense escalated as my phone buzzed on the table. A message from work flashed on the screen, urgent and demanding attention. I glanced at Mia, and we shared a brief, unspoken understanding. The intrusion of the outside world threatened to disrupt the fragile sanctuary of the apartment. Every movement, every choice, every decision now carried heightened stakes. Could I navigate my professional obligations while preserving the secrecy and integrity of this new identity? Mia's hand lingered on mine, her touch grounding me amid the swirling storm of emotions. "We'll manage it," she said softly, her voice a lifeline amid the chaos. The tension was palpable, but her presence offered a fragile sense of stability. I took a deep breath, straightening my posture, feeling the weight of my pregnancy, the sway of my hips, the unfamiliarity of heels beneath my feet. Each element of my new existence demanded attention, care, and precise navigation. A sudden noise from the hallway made me jump, a neighbor returning late, perhaps, but it also made me acutely aware of the fragility of my secrecy. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every gesture was magnified, each one a potential revelation of the reality I had been hiding. I adjusted my skirt, smoothed my blouse, and subtly shifted my stance, trying to appear composed, elegant, and natural, all while my heart raced with suspense. Mia's eyes followed my every move, but there was no judgment in her gaze, only fascination and a willingness to engage with the extraordinary circumstances that had become our reality. The pregnancy, the body swap, the cross-dressing, it was no longer a secret between me and myself. It was a shared experience, a delicate dance of trust, vulnerability, and emerging intimacy. I moved to the couch, sitting carefully, mindful of every shift in my weight, every sway of my body. The sensation of the pregnancy pressed against my awareness, a constant reminder of the irreversible reality I now inhabited. Mia settled beside me, her presence a silent affirmation that I was not alone in this journey, that the suspense, the fear, and the thrill could be shared, navigated, and perhaps even embraced together. The night stretched on, filled with whispered conversations, careful movements, and stolen glances. Every moment was charged with anticipation, the suspense of secrecy, the thrill of discovery, the delicate balance of identity. My reflection in the mirror across the room caught my eye, reminding me of the duality I now lived with, the person I had been and the person I had become, inseparable yet distinct. As the hours passed, the emotional tension built to a near-palpable intensity. Every sound, every gesture, every subtle glance between Mia and me carried layers of meaning, suspense, and emotional weight. The apartment had become a theater of transformation, a stage for revelation, and a crucible for intimacy. And as I rested my hands on my belly, feeling the subtle flutters within, I realized that the suspense was far from over. Every heartbeat, every breath, every interaction was a step toward further discovery, deeper understanding, and the inevitable confrontation with a reality that was now fully, irrevocably mine. Just as the tension in the apartment began to settle into a fragile rhythm, a sharp ring from the intercom shattered the quiet. My heart lurched, every muscle in my body tightening instinctively. Mia's eyes met mine, wide and questioning. We both knew what that meant. Someone at the entrance, completely unaware of the world-altering secret that was unfolding within our walls. The suspense that had been simmering now surged into a full boil. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. The delicate lines of my makeup, the soft sway of my skirt, and the undeniable curve of my belly were all exposed in that single instant. This was the moment I had feared, the collision of secrecy with the unpredictability of the outside world. My hands rested lightly on my stomach, a protective gesture that felt almost symbolic, shielding the evidence of transformation and life itself. Mia's voice was steady but low. "Stay calm. I'll handle it." She moved with deliberate grace to the intercom, speaking to the stranger with a practiced ease I envied. I watched her, admiration mixing with the underlying anxiety, feeling both grateful and vulnerable. My dual identity, the me I had been and the me I had become, hung in the balance, exposed to the potential scrutiny of whoever awaited outside the door. A few tense moments passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Then came the sound of footsteps approaching, deliberate, echoing in the hallway. My pulse spiked. I knew that if Mia didn't manage this correctly, my secret could unravel in an instant. My body tensed, every instinct screaming to hide, to protect, to maintain the fragile illusion of normalcy. Mia returned, a small but confident smile on her face. "It's just a neighbor," she whispered, her hand brushing reassuringly against mine. Relief surged through me, though it was mixed with residual adrenaline that refused to leave my system. Every movement, every gesture, every breath was still fraught with tension. The suspense wasn't gone. It had simply shifted, becoming internalized, a quiet but unyielding force pressing against my chest. I moved toward the bedroom, seeking a moment of privacy, of reclaiming the control that had been so tenuous moments ago. The heels pressed against my feet, reminding me of the careful balance I now had to maintain. Each step, each sway, each tilt of my head was a calculated act, a negotiation between exposure and concealment. The apartment, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a theater of tension, suspense, and revelation. But then, another unexpected twist. My phone buzzed violently, the screen lighting up with a call from Mia's sister. I froze. The very thought of being discovered in this state, mid-transformation, mid-pregnancy, mid-secret, made my stomach churn. Mia glanced at me, understanding immediately. Her fingers brushed mine, a grounding gesture that reminded me I wasn't alone in this unfolding chaos. The call went to voicemail, but the sound itself had already tightened the coils of suspense around my chest. I sank onto the edge of the bed, hands resting lightly on my belly, feeling the subtle flutter of life inside me. Each movement, each shift, each flutter reminded me of the stakes, not just of secrecy, but of identity, transformation, and the irreversible path I now walked. Mia sat beside me, her presence a comforting anchor. "You're doing so well," she whispered, her voice soft yet firm. "We'll navigate this together." Her words were both reassurance and a challenge, a subtle reminder that the suspense, the uncertainty, and the intensity were far from over. My dual identity, my cross-dressing, my pregnancy, all of it required careful management, constant vigilance, and emotional resilience. Then came the sound that made my heart seize, a faint knock from the bedroom window. I froze, panic flaring. Shadows shifted outside, and the night seemed to lean in closer, pressing against the fragile walls of our sanctuary. Mia's hand gripped mine, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of urgency and calm determination. The suspense escalated to a fever pitch, every second stretched endlessly, every sound amplified, every movement critical. I rose slowly, moving toward the window, hips swaying carefully, heels clicking softly. The night air pressed against my skin through the slightly open pane, the coolness mingling with the heat of anxiety coursing through me. My reflection in the glass merged with the faint outline of the city outside, creating a surreal image of duality, both myself and the transformed persona I inhabited, both secret and exposed. The fluttering inside me intensified, not just from pregnancy, but from adrenaline. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide, to conceal the evidence of who I had become. But at the same time, there was a thrill, a dangerous, intoxicating excitement that made my pulse race and my senses sharpen. The suspense was no longer just about secrecy. It was about control, identity, and the thin line between vulnerability and empowerment. Mia whispered again, her breath warm against my ear. You're stronger than you think. Her words grounded me, yet they also reminded me of the stakes. The pregnancy, the transformation, the cross-dressing, they were all undeniable now. The suspense, once external, had become internal, a battle between fear, desire, and the thrill of inhabiting a body that was both mine and astonishingly new. Suddenly, a shadow moved outside the window. Quick, deliberate, threatening. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively pressed a hand to my belly, as if protecting not just the life inside me, but the fragile identity that had taken root over these past days. Mia moved beside me, ready, alert, her presence a mixture of shield and ally. The suspense tightened, coiling around us like a living thing, as the night threatened to expose what we had been nurturing in secret. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light became a signal, a potential revelation. My body trembled, not just from fear, but from the intoxicating blend of adrenaline, anticipation, and the undeniable thrill of inhabiting this new form. The suspense was now absolute, a high-stakes dance on the knife edge between discovery and concealment, vulnerability and empowerment, fear and exhilaration. And in that moment, standing before the window, feeling the subtle movement of life inside me and the weight of my transformation, I realized that there was no turning back. The suspense had reached a peak, the stakes were higher than ever, and the climax of this extraordinary journey was only just beginning. The night air pressed through the slightly ajar window, carrying the faint hum of traffic and distant sirens, but inside, the apartment felt like a pressure cooker. My heartbeat thundered, each pulse echoing in my ears. The shadow outside had vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving an unsettling void, a reminder that the world beyond these walls was unpredictable and merciless. Mia's hand gripped mine, a lifeline in the storm of tension and fear. I sank onto the couch, trying to steady my breathing. The pregnancy inside me shifted, a fluttering reminder of the reality I now inhabited and the transformation I had secretly longed for. The duality of my existence, my past self and this feminized, pregnant form, felt almost unbearable, yet intoxicating. Every curve, every subtle sway of my body, every soft click of my heels was a testament to a secret fulfilled, now fully exposed to the vulnerability of suspense. Mia crouched beside me, her voice soft but urgent. "Alex, we need to think carefully. Any sudden movement, any loud sound, could bring someone back unexpectedly. We have to control what happens next." Her gaze swept the room, alert for the slightest hint of intrusion. The weight of responsibility pressed against my chest, not just for myself, but for the unborn life inside me and the fragile trust between us. I nodded, my hands resting lightly on my belly. I understand," I whispered, my voice trembling. The adrenaline coursing through me made each breath feel sharper, each movement more deliberate. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, soft curves, delicate features, a belly subtly pronounced, heels adding height, skirt flowing elegantly, all evidence of a transformation that was no longer secret, yet dangerously fragile. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed again. My stomach dropped, every nerve screaming in alarm. Mia's fingers brushed mine, grounding me, but the tension spiked instantly. Whoever was at the door this time could disrupt the delicate balance we had fought to maintain. The suspense tightened, an invisible coil constricting around my chest. Mia approached the intercom cautiously, speaking with measured politeness. "We're just settling in. Is this urgent?" Her tone was calm, professional, but I could sense the tension radiating through her posture. I watched, holding my breath, feeling every heartbeat as if it carried the weight of the world. The voice on the other side belonged to a neighbor, slightly impatient, asking about a package Ms. delivered earlier. Relief surged, but it was fleeting. The night had already demonstrated how fragile secrecy could be, how quickly vulnerability could be exploited. Every knock, every call, every unexpected sound reminded me that my transformed identity, my pregnancy, and my deepest desires were exposed to potential discovery at any moment. Mia turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and fascination. "We're going to get through this," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture, small and intimate, sent a shiver of awareness through me. The suspense had shifted slightly from immediate external threats to the tension within us, the emotional tightrope we now walked together. I moved toward the bedroom, careful with each step, heels clicking softly against the hardwood. The pregnancy shifted with every movement, a constant reminder that my body was no longer solely my own. Each motion was deliberate, each breath measured, as if even the smallest misstep could reveal the secret I had carried for so long. Mia followed, her presence a comforting anchor, yet the suspense remained palpable, almost electric in intensity. We entered the bedroom, and I turned to face the mirror. My reflection was mesmerizing and frightening at once. The softened contours of my body, the subtle swell of pregnancy, the elegance of the skirt and blouse, the shimmer of makeup perfectly applied, all of it screaming a truth I could no longer deny. My heart pounded, a mixture of fear, excitement, and awe. I was living a secret desire, yet now it was a living, breathing reality that demanded navigation, caution, and courage. Mia's voice broke the heavy silence. "You're stunning," she whispered. Her words, sincere and filled with awe, made the adrenaline surge anew, mixing with a vulnerability I could scarcely contain. The suspense had become a shared experience, not just my fear of exposure, but our collective tension, the delicate balance between revelation and concealment, intimacy and uncertainty. Then, unexpectedly, a sound from the hallway, a creak of a floorboard, made me jump. Mia's hand instinctively covered mine, and we both froze. The suspense was immediate, visceral, unrelenting. Every muscle in my body tensed, every nerve alight, as the possibility of exposure loomed again. The pregnancy shifted, reminding me that my body, my identity, and my secret were intertwined, inseparable and vulnerable. Mia whispered softly, "Stay calm. Trust me." Her reassurance was a lifeline, but the tension remained taut. I moved toward the closet, instinctively adjusting my posture, smoothing my skirt, and taking deep, measured breaths. The suspense now wasn't just external, it was internal, a psychological intensity that pushed me to the edge of emotional and physical awareness. I looked at Mia, our eyes locking. There was a silent understanding between us. The night, the suspense, the duality of my identity, and the life growing inside me were all stakes in a game we hadn't chosen, yet had to navigate. The suspense, now heightened to near physical tension, demanded awareness, control, and courage. Every step, every breath, every subtle gesture was a negotiation with reality itself. And then, from the corner of the room, a small object tumbled to the floor, a pendant I had worn for comfort, a symbol of identity and transformation. It struck the floor with a faint metallic clink, echoing in the silence. My heart leapt. The suspense surged anew. Mia's eyes widened, but she didn't move. The small, symbolic act reminded me that even the tiniest details could unravel everything, that the stakes were higher than ever, and that the climax of this extraordinary journey was spiraling toward an inevitable revelation. The pendant's faint clink still reverberated in my mind when another sound reached my ears, a sudden knock at the front door. Unlike before, this one carried a sense of urgency, of purpose. My heart thudded violently, each beat echoing the rising tension inside me. Mia's hand found mine, and I felt the same mix of comfort and dread I had felt all night. Whoever it was now could see more than just a shadow. We were fully exposed in this apartment, with my transformed body, pregnancy, and secret identity all hanging in the balance. I crept toward the door, each step careful, deliberate. My heels clicked softly against the hardwood, a metronome counting down to a moment I both feared and anticipated. Mia's eyes followed me, her hand on my shoulder grounding me, reminding me that we were facing this together. Every ounce of adrenaline, every flutter of the unborn life within me, surged with intensity. The suspense had never been higher. Peering through the peephole, I froze. It was our landlord, holding a notice about an inspection, something that couldn't be avoided. My stomach twisted. The reality hit me like a physical blow. In a few minutes, a stranger would be walking through our apartment, seeing me in this transformed, pregnant, feminized body. Panic and exhilaration intertwined, leaving me trembling, yet strangely aware of the thrill of living a secret desire in such a high-stakes situation. Mia leaned close, whispering, "We need to think fast." Her voice was calm, focused, a stark contrast to the chaos surging in my chest. I nodded, feeling the weight of my transformation, my pregnancy, and my secret identity pressing down on me. We had to act quickly, yet every movement, every decision carried immense risk. I moved to the bedroom, scanning for anything that could help conceal the evidence. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, my soft curves, the subtle swell of pregnancy, the skirt flowing elegantly, the makeup flawless, everything on display, yet fragile. I pressed my hands to my belly, feeling the flutter within, a reminder of both vulnerability and strength. This was no longer about secrecy alone. It was about survival, about navigating a reality that had become far more complicated than I could have imagined. The doorbell rang again, sharper this time. I froze. Mia glanced at me, her eyes reflecting both worry and determination. We had moments, perhaps seconds, to act. The suspense was unbearable, every second stretched into an eternity. I straightened my posture, smoothed my skirt, and adjusted my blouse. My body was both weapon and shield, a delicate balance of elegance, femininity, and the undeniable proof of transformation. Mia whispered instructions, guiding me like a strategist directing a soldier in the heat of battle. We moved swiftly yet cautiously, arranging objects, hiding evidence, and creating a semblance of normalcy. The suspense was tangible, almost physical, wrapping around us like a living entity. My heartbeat raced, my palms damp, every nerve alight with tension and anticipation. Then, unexpectedly, a loud creak from the bedroom floorboard made both of us freeze. The landlord's footsteps had begun inside the apartment. My stomach twisted, adrenaline spiking to a peak. I pressed a hand against my belly, instinctively shielding the physical proof of my transformation, while Mia subtly adjusted my posture and whispered, "Stay calm. We'll get through this." I inched toward the living room, trying to appear natural, composed, and entirely ordinary, yet the reality was anything but. Every sway of my hips, every subtle shift of weight, every breath was a tightrope walk between exposure and concealment. The suspense had reached a fever pitch, every second a test of nerves, patience, and emotional control. The landlord's shadow fell across the doorway, and I froze mid-step. Mia's hand tightened around mine, an unspoken signal to remain still. Time seemed to slow, each tick of the clock amplifying the stakes. My reflection in the glass of the cabinet caught my eye, soft features, gentle curves, a delicate femininity I had secretly desired, now fully on display. The thrill mingled with terror, creating a heady mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. Suddenly, the landlord's voice cut through the silence. "I just need to check the smoke detector in here. Shouldn't take long." Relief and dread collided. A few moments of calm were granted, but the suspense remained. Every second now carried the risk of discovery. Every gesture could reveal the secret I had worked so hard to maintain. Mia subtly guided me toward a more discreet corner of the apartment, whispering, "Just stay close to me. Nothing will happen if we move carefully." I nodded, my hands lightly resting on my belly, feeling the flutters of life within me. Each movement was deliberate, a negotiation between the desire to maintain secrecy and the thrill of embracing my transformed identity. The landlord moved through the apartment, oblivious to the truth that pulsed beneath the surface. My body tensed with every step, yet I couldn't help but notice the delicate lines, the softness of my features, and the undeniable reality of pregnancy that now defined me. The suspense was unbearable, yet intoxicating, a dance on the knife edge between exposure and secrecy, vulnerability, and exhilaration. Finally, the landlord left, closing the door behind him with a faint click. Mia exhaled softly, a mix of relief and residual tension. I sank onto the couch, hands still resting on my belly, feeling the adrenaline ebb slowly, replaced by a lingering awareness of the night's events. The suspense hadn't ended. It had merely shifted, leaving a residue of tension, vulnerability, and exhilaration that refused to dissipate. We looked at each other, silent acknowledgement passing between us. The duality of my existence, the pregnancy, the cross-dressing, all had survived the night unscathed, yet the memory of suspense, the thrill of near discovery, and the intensity of emotional vulnerability would linger. The night had been a crucible, forging a deeper connection between Mia and me, a shared secret, and an understanding that our journey had only just begun. As I rested back, feeling the subtle flutter inside me, I realized the suspense was far from over. Every future moment carried potential revelation. Every visitor, every phone call, every shadow outside the window could trigger the delicate balance of secrecy, desire, and transformation. Yet despite the fear, the anxiety, and the uncertainty, there was an undeniable exhilaration, a thrilling affirmation that my secret desire had become an undeniable reality.